There is a little bit of a problem with the way that people like to track their KPIs. So I'll get a lot of like questions on like very weird and random questions, like how many Cupid conversations is it to equal one sub? Like that's not a metric that matters, okay? How many VAs does it take to do this in this amount of time? That's also a KPI that doesn't really matter, or at least from like a business owner's like perspective, okay? What you guys need to understand is there are certain metrics that matter at an overarching level, and there's some metrics that don't matter at all. Something that I had been brought to my attention by my COO, and so I want to kind of break this down, like how you actually track KPIs properly. So first and foremost, this kind of started when I asked my COO to create staff checklists, because I wanted to be able to see exactly what they were doing. I was in this weird position where I knew we were doing stuff, but I felt like some of them were being lazy and I wasn't really sure. And when you have like a large sales team, and in this case it'd be like chatters for an example, there needs to be a way that you can look at, their individual performance and whatnot. And I was talking to my COO, and this is when like brought up the conversation of us wanting checklists and whatnot. And I was like, our team is getting really big. Like, how do we know? Yes, I know like everybody says they're doing something, but how do we know if things are actually getting done? You know what I mean? So I was like, please, let's make checklists. He pretty much just told me that that was unnecessary. He said that you do not need to make individual checklists. And this is good conversation I had with him, because he was really high up in a corporate company, I think it might be a Fortune 500 company, I'm not sure, but a really big like enterprise company. And he was able to give me insights on kind of how they structure, their businesses, because at the end of the day, that's kind of what we're striving for, is creating real, fundamental, real businesses, right? Instead of just like little side hustles and whatnot. So he pretty much said, one, it's uncomfortable for staff. Okay, because not every staff member wants to use the to-do list that you want them to use. Me personally, we use ClickUp for like our entire internal back-end system, and not everybody wants to put all of their to-do lists in ClickUp. Some of them like to use Amy, some of them like to use their iPhone notes or their MacBook notes. Some of them like to use to-do list or Todoist. Like there's 1.5 million things. Okay, some of them like pen and paper, and so you forcing like this super uncomfortable work environment by making them do to-do lists in a certain place just because you want them to do it is uncomfortable. And if anything, it's going to have a negative repercussion, because people either, one, aren't going to mark them, so then you're going to assume that they're not actually doing anything when realistically they are doing something, but you're not really tracking it. Like they're not necessarily jotting it down, so you're not really able to track it, and so you get a wrong impression. And two, it's just, when you go to like a friend's house or something, and it's really difficult to play. When I was younger, obviously I don't play video games anymore, but you have your own like at-home game set up. And then you go to, your friend's house and they have a game set up, but you don't play as good because it's not your setup. You know what I mean? It's very similar, okay? It is very, very, very similar. And it doesn't necessarily mean just because things are getting done, on a checklist, that the things that are getting done are actually things that need to be getting done. And so you almost might have like this like reverse effect where it looks like the to-do lists are full, but there's nothing is happening within the actual company. And that's because at the same time, it also inspires like this motivation to just put stuff on the to-do list to make it look like they're doing something more than they're actually doing. All around bad idea, okay? So an example is, like, we had this guy, he was running follow and follow, and he was essentially tracking this similarly, and essentially, having his entire staff run off of a to-do list. And based off the to-do list, they were doing everything that they were supposed to be doing. They really were. But the numbers still weren't adding up. And so this wasn't necessarily a to-do list problem. This was like a fundamental business issue, okay? And so there's a solution to it. My COO essentially told me that the individual tasks don't matter. And at a large enough scale, you're not even going to be able to track individual to-do lists anyway, unless you want to hire an even larger team to just simply look at to-do lists all days, okay? And so what actually matters are the overarching KPIs. So you have this massive sales team, for an example. It's like, how do I know that the guys are doing what they're supposed to be doing? They're following up. They are, doing all the messaging, and they're staying on the accounts and yada, yada, yada. And you know that things are being done because the overarching KPIs say that they're being done. Let's say your company is supposed to do $100,000 this month, and you don't do $100,000 this month. Then you know that there's people that are not doing their job, and then it needs to be looked into. But the problem that we have right now is people aren't looking at the overarching numbers and the overarching databases and then coming to a confined answer and then developing a solution based off of that. Instead, they're looking at individual performance tasks, okay? And so Anyway, the kind of like where this like initially stemmed from was like I wanted to know like if my sales team was just being lazy or not. And I was like, do I make them do a to-do list? Like, how do I track it? And he just simply said to just develop, well, he developed, but he just said we just need a simple dashboard that allows us to oversee everything that is supposed to be done in grouped numbers. And this right here is going to give you an overarching KPI. So we're supposed to do, let's say we have a total of 1,000 fans are coming in, okay, in an entire month on, the company side. Like the number of creators that you have, you're supposed to have about 1,000 fans that come in. Okay? Doesn't matter how many fans or how many creators you have. Just a general number. Let's say of those 1,000 that come in, your company should project a certain number. And if that certain number isn't hit, then you know that people aren't doing their job. That's how you know if people aren't doing their job. And then that is when you go in individually and you start looking at the individual things that are and aren't being done. You don't do that through checking their checklist. You then just do a quick company audit. All right. And realistically, you as the boss, you as the CEO shouldn't even be the one that has to do the audit. Should be the things that like your team and your staff are just doing independently because it's, what they're trained to do and whatnot. But then this is where segmentation comes into play. And it's just simply breaking down everything that you have operating within your business is breaking it down into segments. Okay. So let's just take like follow and follow as an example. The entirety of follow and follow realistically is buying accounts, setting them up, adds power, which is also proxies, putting them on Cupid, and then starting to do following and then not following. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to create a dashboard. You can do this on Airtable. You can do this on Lucre Studio. It doesn't matter how you do it. But what this dashboard is going to do is it's going to give you a high level overview of everything that's going on inside of the operation. And like, so for an example, you'd want to have a little section that just shows how many accounts you have in the inventory. Simple, just so you know how many accounts you have. And then how many accounts of those in the inventory are being set up. So then you have a backlog and you know how much inventory we have. In case this number starts to go down, your staff knows to then replenish that. Okay. Then how many of these accounts are finished set up? How many of these accounts are getting migrated to Ads Power? How many of these accounts are running on Cupid? What accounts exactly are running on Cupid? How many are doing following? How many are doing unfollowing? Then you can say, okay, it looks like we're just not getting subs. And so you'd quickly look over this high level overview and you'd say, okay, well, my staff is buying accounts. So good. My staff is getting them set up. Good. They are putting them on Ads Power because my dashboard is reflecting that. Cupid is running, but we're not getting subs, which means all of this stuff is good, okay? It means you don't need to go and look at any of this. It means you need to just look here at Cupid. And then this gives you an idea of exactly where the bottlenecks are that you can then fix, okay? By just looking at a high level overview. So for an example, I had this guy in the licensing group, I'm pretty sure, or maybe in the members, and he was pretty much telling me that they were doing a ton of follows, but they just weren't getting any subs. And come to find out that the list of the targets that they were following was going down because the VAs were marking it like as going down. But what was happening is when they were following the actual accounts, these accounts were like action blocked or something. And so as soon as they would follow, Instagram would immediately unfollow, and they didn't catch it. Okay, they didn't catch that this was happening. But with enough segmentation, you would have been able to catch that because it would have just simply be a metric that you would put on a dashboard. It's how many targets am I supposed to follow today based on this number of accounts? And this could just be an overarching number. Like let's say you're on week 2 of your accounts and your accounts are supposed to do 10 follows per day. So then you look at how many disappeared from that list, or you could do total and then minus what you have at the end of the day, which is how many were removed. And then you can just look at the number of follows that your accounts did in total and see if this number exactly matches. So instead of going and looking at every single individual account to see if every account did its follows, you can just do a high level dashboard that gives you number of targets you started with, number of targets you have now. Let's say you had 1,000 and now you have 900. It means 100 follows were done. And then your dashboard is going to show how many follows did your accounts do today. And if that equals 50, it means 50 people were not followed, okay? Even though 100 were missing. And so you create dashboards. You don't need to go and look at every single individual account. You don't need to ask super meticulous questions. You just need dashboards that simply are overarching KPI metrics that you can see. And in like another example for our info company, one of the things that we look at is like, how do we know the salespeople are actually doing their job? How do we know that they're actually doing what they're supposed to do? Well, I can one, have an overarching metric that shows this is how many leads came in and this is how many sales we did. This is the revenue. And if that number looks good, chances are we're chilling. Okay. Or I can break this down into pods and I can say individual pods for each salesperson and then separate all of the leads between each salesperson. And then each salesperson, let's say they have 10 leads a day. I can look at the overarching numbers on the 10 leads a day, how much revenue was generated. Okay. If it doesn't make sense, if it doesn't equal the number it should, it's not 25% were sales, then he's not doing his job. Okay, it's as simple as that. I don't need to go and like ask to see his to-do list and then see all of the recordings and, really, really, really like overemphasize like, meticulous tracking on this one person. You just simply look at the KPIs. The overarching numbers tell you everything you need to know about your entire business. Okay, see ya.